an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Fullmetal Alchemist, Brotherhood, episode 50, Upheaval in Central. Unfortunately, I think I said last episode was episode 50. I was incorrect. In this episode, we have got the beginnings of the battle happening in Central, except our guys have decided that they're going to do as much as they can to not kill anybody, which is surprising. Not inherently bad, but surprising. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to oh my God, do you guys hear me? Welcome to Spoil Me. I am Natasha. Thank you to Max for commissioning this episode. I'm really excited to talk about this one because there is like a real shift in our focus all of a sudden. And I want to know what happens. We start off picking up en media res, as it were. And indeed, the shot that we heard at the end of the last episode, which seemed to suggest that somebody had shot the Fuhrer's wife, is in fact a group of soldiers who have been positioned in the rafters to surround these soldiers and stop them. And they all disable the soldiers by shooting them in the legs, the arm, anywhere that will get them down. And I don't know, y'all, if I have seen this dude before, but the leader of this crew appears to be a guy he's got a widow's peak and a couple of like highlights that I think are supposed to be gray coming away from his temples. Sort of like a more understated Polly Walnuts. But I don't remember him, and I don't know if I am supposed to, or if this is supposed to be the first time we're seeing him, or what the deal is with this guy. I found it weird that he is occupying such a powerful position in the midst of everything, and I didn't even recognize his face. And it doesn't matter. I just want to make sure, Damien says PR position. They didn't kill anyone. I guess that makes them the good guys. Yeah, exactly. It's the kind of thing that I always laugh about with Daredevil. It's like he says that he doesn't kill anybody, but he will like give somebody 3 concussions in a row and throw them over a balcony to break both legs. And he's like, but they're still alive. And I'm like, do they want to be? Like, yikes. So this dude comes forward and says, you told them to kill everyone except Mustang. So was that a direct order to kill the Fuhrer's wife? And Roy is watching her and looks really grim. And then in his head, he's thinking, I hate that my suspicions were proven correct. So this entire thing was a setup for her to see that her husband ain't shit, basically. He organized this all just to make the point to her that he doesn't give a shit if you live or die. Actually, he probably gave the order that you should die. And what's interesting is that he didn't. We know he didn't. He hasn't been seen. They are doing what they think is for the best, because none of them has had any sort of chat with Wrath about his feelings for his wife. And obviously, Pride is a whole other situation. So both of them seem to be, if not like actually feeling a lot of affection, they're not necessarily like they don't love her, but they clearly value her and at least feel a little bit like protective of her. I am really interested in whether they find out what's going on here, because Pride is being kept sequestered in that other area, And Wrath is MIA. We don't know where he is. I know he's still alive. He's got to be out there. But what he's doing, genuinely don't know. And yeah, this is when she says, does this mean that my husband either abandoned me, or is it that our country is betraying him? And I was like, oh my God, the idea that the country's betraying you guys and that this order didn't even come from him, that didn't occur to me. And were I in her position, I think that's the stance I would prefer to believe, you know? And Roy just says, I don't know. But either way, we are going to make sure that you come out of this alive. We're not going to leave you to die. And once the dust has settled, you can be the one to tell our country that we were always on their side, which is incredibly smart and also like really shrewd in a way that you would have to be, politically speaking. But it feels so icky to me. You know, it's like 100% the right way to handle the situation, because you need somebody that the country has trusted before all of this and will continue to trust. You need them vouching for you to ease the transition of power and assure everyone they aren't going to be more of the same. It wasn't just a power grab. They want to change. But the way they're positioning her to be used like that is just, it makes me feel kind of gross. And I'm really surprised that he just says it to her. Because that's the kind of thing, like, you don't want your pawns to know exactly the play you're about to make, usually. And I'm not mad at him for it, but I was for a moment like, should you be telling her that? Damien in the chat says the guy with the streaks is named Charlie. His intro was cut from the anime. But he was at least decently fleshed out in the manga. He was a fellow soldier with Roy during Ishval. Okay. It makes sense that he had an intro that got cut, because they very much treat this as if I should know who he is. And it's not like a dramatic reveal, you know, like it is with Ross later, who is back, by the way. And so there's no flourish to it that makes me think it's meant to be like, done. But there's no real introduction or calling him by name in a way that indicated that he was supposed to be new to us either. So I was like, oh, I really hope that I am not completely forgetting an entire character who holds this sort of power. So everybody is like evacuating the building, and he says, and I'm going to keep it in mind, Charlie, thank you, Damien. Charlie says to this dude, hey man, I know you're having a really bad day and I sympathize, but you should be very glad that we aren't from Briggs, because this would be a kill shot. And the guy goes, what? And he just shoots him in the leg. And it's one of those, like, the guy going, what? I'm not trying to say I wouldn't also respond that way. Sometimes I am very quick in the moment, and then there are times where I would be like, what? Also, I like to think as soon as I heard that sentence come out of his mouth, I would be on my way out the door, but maybe not. And Roy says, I was expecting Grumman. And this dude says he's sorting out the wreckage, and I am interested in Roy's thoughts. He isn't given any space here to like think to himself about what it means that Grumman isn't here. And I am really curious about it. You know, like, does he suspect something is up, that Grumman is like abandoning him until the end? Does he think Grumman's turning traitor and actually helping Wrath? Or just genuinely, this moment, I wanted more of a reaction from him than I got, and I'm super curious. He just seems unhappy, but like, Roy kind of seems that way a lot of the time. And Charlie asks Roy if he has informed Mrs. Bradley of what happened with her husband, and he says, no, it'll slow us down too much if she passes out, which is a weird stance to take, because the idea of somebody just straight up passing out feels very theatrical to me. It doesn't seem like something that, and I'm fine with him not telling her. I mean, there's really no reason to at this point. She gets to know what she gets to know because you're in the midst of a fucking battle. But that would also turn her against them. Excuse me, guys. Sneeze. I'm sure that she's not going to look too favorably on the fact that they let her be under the impression her husband is abandoning her, when likely her husband is not alive to give that order. And it's weird to me because Roy is sort of relying on her to later back up the fact that they're the good guys. But won't she figure out the timing of this and realize that she got played? And that, like, oh, my husband didn't abandon me. Oops. Or maybe they just figure by the time this is over and they, like, more of Wrath's plan and the plan of Father will have been uncovered, so she'll finally begin to realize that he wasn't anything like what she thought. And maybe they think she'll vouch for them purely because she's a rational, decent person, and the truth will do that. I'm willing to go that way. That makes sense. So we are watching them try and leave the building, and the military is beginning to infiltrate on their way up. I really do appreciate that they make sure to have all of them still in uniform. And the guys that are working with Roy, because of course they've defected essentially, are all in like casual wear, essentially. They are all very much streetwear. And there's something about the look of them being in streetwear that makes it feel a little bit more threatening because no, you don't know which ones are them. I mean, from the perspective of the military, they could just be like a refugee huddling in a corner, or it could be somebody tricking you who is a soldier. That feels like a little nice bit of guerrilla warfare going on potentially, which I'm into. And Roy, for his part, is getting all of them to clear out without actually killing them. He keeps on like shooting lightning and causing explosions in areas that will frighten them, that will be very impressive and overwhelming in the moment, but that wouldn't actually kill them. And then we go to the like headquarters in Central. Guys, I didn't realize that this general's, I'm assuming he's a general, is named Kremlin. But that's hilarious. I am surprised, to be honest, that there hasn't been like more of a series of references like that in the show. Because like, we've got Fuhrer, but that's an actual title in this world. It's not a name like Kremlin. So it was just one of those moments where I was like, wait, what? Oh my God. And he is demanding to, because they've got I don't know what you would call this. Are they using Morse code? It looks like that kind of translation. They are, and I would assume it is because of what happens later, which I really don't like, but we'll get there. They're telling him that they have 59 men injured, 0 casualties. And it's just too distinct a number, completely 0. And he's like, I don't understand what it is they're doing. And then we go to a couple of soldiers who are like, I don't get it. I mean, all of us are fine. I don't get what the big deal is about Roy. He was talked about like he was a kind of legend. And he's not really doing much damage, actually. And one of them says all of his explosions have been pretty tame. And then all of a sudden, the entire building goes out. And again, this is very like, I don't kill anybody, but I'm going to cause an entire building to explode outward. That would kill them. Like, it would. These are giant chunks of what I assume are concrete flying through the air at velocities that would easily smush a skull into bits. But it's a good effect for the moment. And I really do like the implication that like Roy can hear them and is kind of thinking, oh, really? Not impressive, huh? And then he just does something a little bit extra because he's salty about it. Especially one dude says that blew out my eardrum. And I was like, okay, now it feels a little bit petty. That felt purposeful. So this is when everybody is like, you know, all of these military men are convening and realizing that nobody has died. And one of them says, it's a miracle nobody's been killed so far. It doesn't make sense. They've got Roy, they've got Hawkeye. And then all of a sudden he says, oh, wait. And we see the sniper drop down and shoot him in the foot. And I love that he goes down screaming, but then just says, there's my answer. Because he just realized, oh, I haven't really accounted for her absence yet, have I? Uh-oh. And, oh, wait, no. His name isn't Kremlin. It's like Kemen. I think I misread that. I think I misread and misheard that. My bad. Oh, that's such a shame. I was so excited about that. Yeah, Kremen. C-R-E-M. I think I just heard and read what I wanted to because of the reference I was making internally. But he realizes all of a sudden that they're purposely not being killed. And what he says is they're mocking us, which is fascinating to me. It doesn't occur to him they're trying to look like the good guys, or they know that these are former fellow soldiers that they might like and not really blame for their position because they're following orders. They don't know necessarily about Roy's plan. None of that. It's they're mocking us because that's the only way that he can interpret this kind of behavior. And there is something about a person who is so detached from the motivation of a thing that they draw an entirely wrong conclusion that I find really funny. It's just one of those moments of being like, oh, wow. I thought you had like not quite grasped the thing, but you still haven't grasped like 2 or 3 things back, actually. You're so much further behind than I thought you were. And because of this, I'm like, does he not get what the ultimate goal is here for them to like take over and rule? Does he think they're just going to seize the same powers for themselves? I guess that's what he must think, that it's like, you know, the homunculi can carry out their thing, but we want to be the ones to benefit from it. So we're going to take you guys out of play. Not that they just want to prevent the thing from happening. Because reminder, we find out from various people that they've been promised, like all the big generals have been promised some kind of payout, which I don't know if that's immortality or like transcendence from just being human entirely, or what it is. But they all seem pretty certain that on the promised day, they are going to reap some kind of like sub-reward. Father is going to get the majority of whatever it is. But whatever it is so astronomical that he can share it with them and they will be utterly transformed just from their little crumbs they get. And I really want them to talk to Hempstool, because he was in the room with a lot of dudes who thought that same thing. And it went exactly as well as it went for them. So I'm sure that they would all believe he's either just making it up, or it wouldn't be like that with us. It would be different. And maybe, but I don't think so. Why would you keep these guys around? You know, I say that, but I don't even know what the fuck Father is even working towards still. So if I don't understand that, then why wouldn't I think he wants to keep them around? Maybe he does want some servants in the New World Order. I have a kind of theory that I'll wait and get to it at the end of the episode. But it's the closest to a real theory as I have gotten this whole time, because I still don't know precisely what it is that he's after. And I haven't really been able to formulate anything that felt like it held any water at all. And I think I may have, not necessarily something that I think is really true, but it's the best theory I've got so far. So anyway, this dude is just saying, I want their body stacked in front of me and I want it now. And we go off to another couple of dudes who are in the room with General Armstrong. And they are thinking, what the hell is he doing over there about this guy? Because they haven't been apprehended and they're eluding everyone without even killing anyone, which takes an extra kind of skill. And Armstrong is sitting there listening to this and says, Colonel Mustang must have gone soft. And the other guy says, well, obviously. And she says, if there's one thing softer than Mustang, it's the men under your command. You might as well send in children. I absolutely live for when she tells these dudes they are little puffy marshmallows. Like, I know that the fact that is an insult is rooted in very toxic masculinity. And I see that, and I understand the problematic nature of my enjoyment. That said, she's so rock steady certain that what she's saying is true. It doesn't feel like somebody just insulting you because they want to get under your skin. It's somebody insulting you because they are saying a thing they genuinely believe about you with their whole chest, which comes across different than just, I want to bother you. You know, she clearly believes the men under their command are pitiful. And her complete belief in that is the part that I think is so delightful and so cutting. There's no way this insult comes across the same way coming from somebody who doesn't have her tone when they say it. It's so good, you guys. I love her so much. Central Command was nearly iced over by a single dissident. It doesn't inspire a lot of hope for the men that you're organizing here. Your men are lacking in experience, whereas my guys, they can defend themselves against fucking grizzly bears without weapons. They are not going to fuck around. So how about you let me step in and take command of a battalion? And this dude says, your presence here has nothing to do with your standing and your seniority. You are being held here as a detainee and nothing more. And what he tells her is essentially, we know that your men are meant to be afraid of. So what we're going to do is keep you hostage to ensure that they follow orders, because they won't want to see any harm come to you. And she bursts out laughing and is like, oh, my guy, you're talking about how my men are so tough. And then you're suggesting that personal affection for me would keep them from doing the right thing? Do you hear yourself? That is the softness I'm talking about that they don't have. They absolutely will not hesitate. The only law they know is survival of the fittest, and they have to abandon me in a crisis. And even if you did murder me, they would be like, guess she was weak. And she is utterly unbothered by it. That's the part, again, that I really enjoy. She's not even like bitter. They'd write me off as weak with a tone to her voice. She's just like, I know what they would do because I taught them to do it because I do it. And again, she owns this room in such a way. This is such a rare thing with a character who is like, has this kind of presence, for it to be felt rather than seen when it's animated like this. Usually there's going to be like stylistic choices in the way it's drawn and the animation to give you a feeling of all the attention being sort of drawn towards this person, or their rising sense of power and excitement. And that's not done here at all. It's purely slow pans around the room with her incredibly relaxed posture in this chair. She's leaning back, one ankle crossed over her knee and her arms folded, just fucking telling him how it is. And there's no gilding. And yet you're still watching it like, oh, you guys are screwed. She has got this under control. Y'all don't even know what she's talking about. And basically it's like, you don't know anything about the guys that I have trained, clearly. And then we cut to the guys that she has trained. And it's pretty brutal. They're all locked in this cellar. Let's tear the throats out of any spineless fool that tries to get in our way. So it turns out these guys apparently have been hiding in the Armstrong mansion. I don't know if they were already there when Mustang came to visit, or if they, like, you know what? I guess they had, I bet there were two gardeners outside while they were talking. And Mustang was talking with her about, like, the repairs. I have to imagine those were her guys already, right? That had arrived before he came to visit at all. And she had already begun setting all of this up. Which, to me, indicates the fight with her brother was so incredibly over-the-top destructive, specifically so that she could have people coming in and out and then be unnoticed. And I don't know if that's true or if it's just a like happy coincidence, but I want to believe it's true because I want to believe that she was thinking that many steps ahead. Like, it probably isn't, because her brother wouldn't have known that's what she was up to, would he? But either way, it worked out quite well. They say that, like, they use moving vans and trucks and stuff to obstruct the view and carry all of the men. So this is when she says, "Here they come, every single one of my men, who is capable, by the way, of defeating a grizzly bear in combat. I wonder if your dolls are as strong as my men." Now, I'll tell you what, kids, I thought she was calling their men dolls. And I felt that insult. But it turns out she's talking about the manufactured, like, fake soldiers, which makes a lot more sense. But calling these dudes dolls, I feel like that could have been pretty good if she wanted to just make it an insult. It would still work. So yeah, we see her men coming in, and the whole fight with these dudes feels very different. It's not that they're necessarily, like, you know, leaving piles of bodies or anything. It's that they feel a lot more direct and aggro. And I think maybe some of that just comes from the fact that Roy has an ability that he can use remotely. He can get people to be scared away before he gets anywhere near them. So it looks a lot more bloodless. But they are killing some people, or at least it seems like they are. We see one dude who's, like, in the midst of realizing He says, what's their head count? We're not sure. Going by their gear, it looks like they're from the north. And this guy says, they're from Briggs, with this expression. And suddenly one of them comes up behind him and they have a knife to his throat. And it looks for all the world like they're going to either just drive it in or slice his throat open. And so I'm like, are they killing? But they were just got done talking about it's amazing that they're doing all of this without killing anyone. So I feel like that's supposed to be an indicator that that's changing. Like, they were being the nice guys to begin with, and now the tide has shifted and we are moving into, oh no, blood is being spilled territory. And then we get the details from Roy about how she was hiding them in the mansion. And this guy comes running up and is like, we need more ammo. And he's like, I'm sorry, I'd give it to you, but I don't have it either. And they want to know where the ammo resupply is. And I love this. Roy tells them, hey guys, if things go left, I need you guys to agree to leave me behind. And all of them go, okay. And he's like, what the fuck? That really did kill me. He's genuinely, you just said, okay, you're supposed to argue with me and indicate that this would be a terrible, tragic decision that would haunt you the rest of your life. Wow. Okay. I guess I understand the nature of our relationship a little bit better now. And all of them are like, look, man, no offense, but we want to laugh, or we want to live. I want to laugh. And he kind of just goes, all right, well, no, I do get it. So it starts to become clear to the military. These guys are like menacing us, but they are not using their guns as much anymore, which probably indicates that they are running out of ammunition. And just as they decide that they are going to rush in and take the initiative here, Rebecca comes screaming up to them in this giant truck for Fuzzy Bear ice cream. Or maybe it's Funny Bear. Either way, it is what looks like a giant ice cream truck. And then when she opens it, it is filled with ammunition and weapons. There's bazookas, there's rifles, there's more bullets. And I really do think this is delightful. I am a sucker a lot of the time for things that look very cutesy. And then you dig a little deeper under the surface and it's actually like really brutal. Not necessarily like dark, because the whole, oh, it looks like a cute cupcake on the inside. And then you cut it open and it's full of skulls. Like, it doesn't need to be a morbid thing, but just the idea of it's like, it looks like a cupcake and then you open it and it's actually a spiked mace. That's practical. I like that better. That's not a symbolic thing. It's just a use to which to put something adorable. And as you guys can see from my office, I love adorable things, but I am also vicious. So it really feels like it expresses a portion of my personality that I want more people to know about. So anyway, Roy comes up to the truck and is waiting for his turn to get stuff. And a woman opens the door of the cab and is like, hey man, here you go. It's good to see you, Colonel. Been a long time, huh? And he's like, what? And she pulls her head back and it's Ross. And she says, returning to active duty without permission, sir, which I did think was pretty cute. And we know that Brosh, in another part of the city, had gotten woken up by everything and seen the fire. And I think he runs into not Major Armstrong and is told that all of this is the work of Roy. And I forgot, he still thinks that Ross was murdered by Roy. So when he hears Roy is behind all of this, he immediately is just like, that man just must be pure evil. And I am extremely excited for him to come at Roy and Ross to step out and be like, yo, dude, it's cool. And him just lose his mind because they were partners forever. And he is going to be so excited that she's alive. So I really, really hope that I get to see that moment because, you know, I understand that we can't fit in everything, but there are some things that should really take priority. And that's one of them. So we have a bit of a firefight by now. And they're still huddled up by the stairs while they're getting all of this other ammunition and this, like, what looks like a rocket launcher, I think, set up. I don't know. Is a rocket launcher and a bazooka the same thing? I think I've always assumed they're the same thing, but I never really thought about it. And the rocket isn't deadly. It's tear gas. It's like this red cloud. So again, they are not trying to kill people. I will say, though, that the truck comes tearing through this cloud on its way out, and that would definitely have killed. Like, they managed to scramble out of the way in the nick of time, but they wouldn't. They would have all died. And they begin firing at the back of the truck, but that shit is too late. And I really do enjoy it. At one point, she's in there and she's showing off these, like, Xingji's bombs. And she's holding open the container of them in the way that you would, like, offer a box of donuts to somebody. And I don't think that's necessarily on purpose, but combined with the Funny Bear ice cream logo, it felt like another reference to the fact that this is, like, meant to be a dessert truck. And I thought that was so funny. Let's see. Damien says capsicum, aka the stuff that makes things spicy, so that'd be painful. Oh, yeah. I mean, like, tear gas is no fucking joke. Especially when there was, like, a lot of protesting going on in 2020. There were a lot of, like, how-tos circulating about how to deal with tear gas like that. Okay, so they're talking about, like, the weapons and where she got them from. And realizing that everything came from Xing, practically. And Roy is like, I didn't even know that you were involved in this stuff to begin with. How did you get all of this? And she says, I'll let you tell him himself, or I'll let him tell you himself. Guys, it's Havoc. And I don't know how he got this set up either. I'm assuming that he's like just the middleman, and he got in contact with Ross somehow. I don't think I realized he knew about Ross being alive, but evidently, you know, apparently he figured something out. But Havoc is here, and I love that when Roy gets on the phone and he, like, greets him, he does so in a very respectful way, and because he doesn't know who he's dealing with. And Havoc just says, man, whose ass do you think you're kissing? I'd prefer it if we kept things casual, Colonel. And then the camera pans out and he's still in a wheelchair, but he has grown a beard. He is looking much less polished than he did before, but I think it suits him. It works. Over 80 years in business, we offer everything you could possibly need, from underwear to arms, and we're just a phone call away. And I really am excited about him being involved in this again. I am still maintaining hope that they find a way to restore his legs using a Philosopher's Stone. And I know that we don't want to be using Philosopher's Stones because they're, like, fucked up, but I am assuming also that we are going to use one somehow. And if we're gonna, like, just do that too. Just throw that in on the list. It's fine. So yeah, he calls it Havoc's, your local general store. Who do I send the bill to? And Roy says, the officer of the Fuhrer, start a tab, which I did really like, actually. So then we go to further out, and we are with the rest of the group. Ed and Lan Fan and Hohenheim and the Gaimira, you know, everybody. And they're watching all of the smoke rise and realizing that shit is beginning to get real in Central. So it's time for us to do something. And Ed turns and goes to speak to Al before they leave to just let him know we're heading in now. And they just have a bit of like a moment here of, be careful, man. I'll try my best. Hohenheim, meanwhile, is talking about the fact that Pride is still in the flask. And he's talking about the concept of, if he's still inside it, if we destroy his container, we may kill him. Or he says we might be able to kill him, which is different than we kill his container and he dies. It's more like we kill his container and he's exposed to potentially die. And not only that, but we might be able to free all of the souls that he has trapped inside him. Which I don't think that I ever really stopped to think about what is supposed to be going on with the souls. Because it's one thing to say all these people were sacrificed. And it's another thing to say their souls are trapped. Which I know has been said. But I don't know why. It just didn't quite hit me until this episode that if they have a religion in this world that involves heaven, what we're saying is they're in hell. They're not being allowed to leave. They're not able to move on, which that's pretty awful. It just added like an extra dimension to everything. Because, you know, the stakes are plenty high enough. I don't really need to have a bunch of trapped souls in addition to it all to make me care. And so I just wasn't really like paying that much attention to that aspect of it. But when I stop and think about that, I'm like, well, I guess we have a whole other thing to worry about. So they talk about like using the tunnel to get in, but it's guarded by a pack of chimeras. And I think probably, now that we have 4 of you, we could probably handle them. And Ed, he says, steer clear of the military, Doc. And they tell Yoki the same thing. And he's like, that's fine. I'm good with that. So the moment where Ed goes and speaks to Al, and they just have the, hey, be careful. Pride is still in there. And he's still tapping on Al's helmet. And we don't really get the serious clue about this until a little bit later. But I am so annoyed that the thing that I had said last episode about, like, I'm surprised that doesn't annoy Al more. I wish it did. Because what it seems like is his blood sigil is in the body of his armor. And if his head is detached, it's not really a part of him anymore. It has to be touching or attached to the part of him that has the blood sigil for it to be like engaged as his body. In other words, Al talks out of his body when his head is taken off, not the helmet, unless I'm mistaken. So I guess it makes sense that he doesn't care that Pride is just drumming on it the way he is. But if he did care, he would make Pride stop, maybe. And what we find out later after this, like, way the camera is dragged through is that Pride is using SOS, or not SOS. He's using, oh my God, I just was talking about it. Morse code, I think, to communicate with Father and perhaps tell him where he is or what happened. And I don't know what Father has time to do right now. I don't know what he is able to do remotely to assist with the situation, but it never even occurred to me, that kind of communication. And I feel really, really fucking dumb. I really do. That feels like something that I should have thought of because of the nature of what these creatures are and the fact that they are not, they don't have the same kind of senses we do. So this would be a thing that would work. If we can use Morse code, using machines that are sensitive enough to pick it up, and they don't even need those machines, yeah, they should be able to use it as well. So, and I love too the way that it's animated. Once you begin to realize that's what's happening, is we see like Pride's shadow and just the bright red eyes, and the red has like this very thin, weird outline of like yellow that I don't know why, but makes them really creepy. Like it's almost like the yellow, like when you draw a jack-o'-lantern and you're drawing the like cuts in the pumpkin itself, and that part is slightly lighter in color if you color it in than the actual center area of the pumpkin. That yellow outline almost makes it seem like you're seeing the edge of the cuts where his eyes are, like his eye sockets. But I don't know how to describe it. It was just something that I looked at. I was like, why is this so extra creepy? And then I realized there was something about that second color being added that just gave it a dimension that was a lot scarier. Pride is just really scary, guys. I don't like him. So then we go to Mei Chang, who is running down the street with the jar that has Envy in it. And she's saying the city is in complete mayhem, and Envy says all the more reason we should hurry. Father is about to reveal the secret of immortality, and we don't want to be late for that. This bothers me, this subplot. I just don't buy it. I have not been given to understand that Mei Chang is stupid. She can be childish, and she has her silly crushes and all of that. But the way she's being played is insulting. I just don't, like, maybe in the manga it was phrased differently or handled slightly differently, but it feels like very disrespectful to her as we have gotten to know her. She made it all the way out here to this other country, crossing this desert by herself. Clearly like a capable little girl with a control over her power that resulted in them being able to catch Envy to begin with by tricking Envy. And then we've moved on to this moment of Envy just somehow getting her to ignore the city's like upheaval by saying, oh, the secret to immortality is about to be revealed. And Mei Chang isn't thinking at all about the fact that like her friends are going to be here because of what's going on. And the whole thing that you were trying to do was stop this ritual that you had started to uncover with them. So she knows a great deal about the information they're working with. And she doesn't put together at all that what Envy is trying to get her to do is probably going to kill her. Like, it just doesn't, I don't see her being this stupid. I know that she's a kid, but you can't have her be as utterly competent as she has been up till this point and then suddenly make her an idiot and claim it's because she's a kid. That has to be more consistent for me to really, either that or Envy's manipulation of her has to be a lot more subtle and clever. And it's very obvious. So this just bums me out because I feel like it's going to be a key thing that happens. And because if a lot hinges on it and it didn't work for me to begin with, I'm just going to feel like that was kind of cheap. So I just want to give you guys warning on that now. You know that I haven't been a fan of this to begin with. And this particular scene almost made it worse because she's just seeing open warfare erupt and isn't apparently concerned or making the connection. And that, even if she had been underground already and so wasn't sure what was happening above ground, that would have been better, But this just, I don't know. Like I said, it feels like it's insulting to her and kind of undermining everything that we were told about who she is. So we cut back to General Armstrong, and she is talking to these two men about what would be offered to them if they pulled this off. And he says, we'll ascend to even greater heights. He promised us. The nation of Amestris will change the world. All of the sacrifices made are an unavoidable part of it. Why don't you understand that? And again, we will be like, we will ascend to unimaginable heights is so vague. What does that mean? Do they even know? Because I've been sort of treating this like they're keeping it secret from her this whole time. But I'm starting to think they aren't actually aware of what it's supposed to really be materially either. Which I hope that's not true. Because the kind of dedication everybody is showing to this cause, I want them to have a concrete idea of what they're supposed to be getting out of it. Otherwise, they are showing quite a bit of commitment to something that's extremely nebulous. But anyway, this is when she says, you bastards are hopeless. And she grabs this one dude who has the gun on her and slices through his wrist with her sword. And then says, what I enjoy about this is essentially, this is like somebody who works on the floor talking about their managers. You scum sit back and safely watch the battlefield as if it were some kind of spectator sport. You don't know anything about sacrifice, and yet you're the first to talk about its necessity. Excuse me. Can somebody write that down and blow it up and hang it in front of the Capitol building or something? That was an entire sermon. You know nothing about sacrifice, and yet you are the first to claim its necessity. Oh, that is so concise. It is just cutting. It's needle sharp. I love that so much, guys. It's like one of the best lines I have heard in recent months, at least. So good. I just, everything about this moment with her feels like such a tremendous victory. I love her. I love her so much. And I know it seems like, ooh, the really tough boss sexy lady. You really like her character. What a shock. Not necessarily. This kind of character can be done embarrassingly, very easily. And I think we all have seen that. You know, tough, sexy lady who is a badass fighter is a bit of a trope because it's often done with a particular viewpoint in mind, a gaze. This is real competence and real ownership of the moment. The voice actress doing this is just great. I love her. I don't know if it's the same one who did Lust, but whomever she is, she's great. So yeah, this dude says, you're betraying your country. And she's like, I don't know if people are going to see that way. And then finishes, I'm not as merciful as our celebrated hero of Ishval. And she lifts the gun, and then we see him fall into the hallway through the double doors with a hole in his forehead. Well, damn. She just fucking did that shit. The other guy she leaves alive. She's got the slice through his wrist, and that's kind of the worst she does to him. And I don't know if there's just a difference in seniority there, that he didn't seem like he was worth killing. But yeah, she's got the gun and she's just standing there watching these dudes who come running and is like, oh my God, is he dead? And it cuts away and I have no idea what it is that she's planning from here, but I cannot wait to see it. Damien says they're different actresses, but damn if both ladies don't do the job. Yeah. They have really good voice actors on this show. So this is when we have all of the ambulances in the street collecting the soldiers who have been injured. And we have Brosh come up and start talking to Major Armstrong. And it was interesting to me because when he says that devious coward, he must be pure evil, he says it with this like strong passion, but then the camera pans upward to Armstrong's face because he's considerably taller than Brosh, and he's just sweating. He's not reacting in the face in any way. And I can't tell if the sweat is meant to be like, I'm worried that the guy I trusted is pure evil, or I've got to keep my cool because I can't tell the guy what he needs to know with all these people around. It's just still unclear to me how much Major Armstrong knows about everything that General Armstrong has been up to. So we go to, oh, that's right. I forgot. Fu is watching this whole exchange as well. General Armstrong shot and killed General Gardner at Central Command. And Armstrong is like, wait, what? And Fu, who's watching from the sidelines, overhears this and is like, what the fuck? Things aren't supposed to be happening this quickly. And I'm not sure what he means by that. Like, which parts? Because that's our ally. Does he not know she's their ally? Is that the problem? And he says, I need to find the young lord, but this presence underground is interfering. And then stops dead and says, wait, why does that presence feel like it's tripled in size since yesterday? And this is when we have the slow pan down to Father, and we hear that clanging, and then we see Pride sitting there, and it feels, because of the way that Father sits forward and his eyes open, like he heard it. I'm not entirely sure what that means in relationship to it feeling like it's 3 times the size it was yesterday. If the fact that Pride is stuck all the way out there has expanded like the overall diameter of control that Father has. But if it were what had happened, and that were wouldn't that be part of their plan? Wouldn't they want as big a diameter as they have gotten? And Pride wouldn't be so desperate to try to get out. I don't know. So anyway, Edward has come up with the idea that they use tunnels to get in via the 3rd laboratory that's like in the hospital, I think is where it is. And when he glances over there with all of his people, there are a bunch of guards out there, and he does he runs up to them and is like, I'm being attacked by Scar. And the guys all look up and are like, that guy's on the wanted list, and immediately begin going for him. And Edward had given Scar absolutely no warning whatsoever that he was going to do this. So when all of the guards turn to face him, Ed looks over their shoulder with this like giddy grin on his face. He's so mischievous and delighted. And then leaps into the air with that face still on and beats the absolute shit out of all of the men who have turned their back on him. And as they head inside, his father says, that was a mean thing to do. Look, Hempstool, don't talk to me about mean things. You don't get to say anything to anybody about that ever again. But yeah, I thought that was a really funny little bit. And they come walking in, and all of the doctors that are in there are like, what the fuck? And finally, Ed finds the spot that's clearly been like, somebody used alchemy to cover it up. And the doors reappear. And I can't remember if the doors originally had this crazy like face with horns on them, because I feel like they must not have, or people would have been like, hey, what are these crazy doors with the face and horns on them for? So I'm assuming Ed chose this design. which is just hilarious. I don't know why, but that got my attention. Like, he just stylistically was like, all right, I'm going to go really fucking metal with this one. Pun intended. And this is when they go and split up. And Hemstool goes with Lanfan, and all the other guys go together in the other direction. And it's so weird, y'all. Thinking about how normal this used to seem to me as a kid. To justify the fact that he wants Lanfan with him, he's being a creep. Talking about how I don't want to share this young lady with the rest of you. And it's just taken for granted. Like, somebody calls him a pervert. But that's it. Now, just, for any men who are listening who don't know what he should have done in this situation, insist on coming with them. Be like, hey, maybe I don't want to leave that girl alone with that creepy old guy and watch them walk alone into the tunnel. Maybe that shouldn't happen. But otherwise, it's just like something that I think about, and you see in so many like movies and TV shows aimed at young kids, is like the older lecherous dude who's just kind of like comic relief, and not to say that Hemstool's actually, because we find out he's not, but it's played as if like it's not really a big deal that he's acting like this. It's just kind of gross, but not a problem. And I watched, I think is it Babes in Toyland? Which is the one where the kids find themselves, or maybe it's Halloween Town. And like the whole premise of Halloween Town before they like wind up where they wind up is that her boss, who's twice her age, keeps trying to fuck her. And that's what turns him into like the villain in this dream town. And it's just the bit that this old man keeps actively sexually harassing her. It's just wild, guys. What are we? We've been teaching our kids this is just to be expected and kind of funny. No wonder people don't know what the fuck is unacceptable. So what it turns out he's doing is separating Lanfan from the rest of them because he knows that she really wants to go and find Ling. She's super worried about him. And essentially, Hemstool is like, I don't need a whole crowd. I am a very powerful alchemist. Just me is going to be fine. So you go ahead and do what you need to do. But I don't, there's a reason that I sent Ed and Scar off with like all the other guys. And I'm also kind of wondering if maybe he's planning on making a kind of sacrifice that he doesn't think they'd be willing to let him make. But it's too early to tell. So he lets her run off. And then we get the final moment in this episode, which is one of the generals is running into the room with all of the super soldiers and yanking the levers to begin sending whatever this material is into them to animate them. And the guy who runs this like area, oh God, sorry guys, I just knocked over a little bottle. The guy who is like in charge of this area is trying to yell at him. We haven't finished that testing yet. They are not ready to be used. To which this dude says, when better is there to use these dudes? We're being attacked at the center of our city by people who are experienced and know how to take us down. This is the fucking time, because I'll bet you if we wait, we don't get to use them anyway. Like, may as well. And we watch this like material, this red light, that looks almost like blood, begin to pour through all of these pipes. And all of a sudden they begin to sprout like these distinct veins along their foreheads, and their eyes open. And it's one eye. It's like, I don't know if it's supposed to be that it's part of the thing that went wrong, but the eye sprouts from the center of their forehead, and the spot where I had thought eyes would be, those eyes are still closed. So I don't know if this is like a secret weapon that maybe some of the dudes didn't realize was there and he's accidentally shown his hand, or if it's just supposed to be, we didn't do enough tests and this isn't supposed to happen at all. But I will tell you what, guys, it wasn't even the eye in the center of their head. It was the scream. I was not prepared for that. I'm expecting cold, soulless soldiers who either don't talk or talk in like single words, 3-word sentences max. I'm thinking things that are unfeeling. And the fact that they are unfeeling is what makes them so dangerous. And instead, they are screaming as if they're in pain. And that changes everything about how I view them, and I don't like it. And this is the part that I'm starting to wonder, because everybody hears this, by the way. All of our friends, we pan from one to the other all over the city, because they stop and go, what the hell is that? But what I'm sort of wondering is whether or not our, like the humans, the generals who have been in on this plan, I feel like they've been told these soldiers will work for you, take down your enemies, and then once we have, once we are victorious, meaning the generals and Father, I, Father, will grant you a reward. And I think that's what they've been told is going to happen. And I'm starting to wonder if Father isn't just like, I'm going to build this army. I'm going to tell you it's on your side. And then I'm going to kill all of you. And the souls that we used to make this possible will be put into these soldiers instead. And that will create like a new race and replace human beings. Because it feels like Father is clearly not being straight with them about what he intends to do. I don't believe that, and never mind the fact that we don't really know what he intends to do anyway. But the fact that everybody is being so vague tells me that's some bullshit in there. But the creation of these soldiers, when that guy flips that lever, we see this material seeping through the pipes that Father is apparently attached to. Which to me points to the fact that he may not be invested in the generals, but he's very physically invested in the soldiers. And if he is doing that, and that's important enough for him to be directly connected to, maybe that's the whole thing. Maybe they aren't completely blindly obedient automatons. And he just wants to replace humanity. Which honestly, go ahead, I guess. We have done a very bad job. Probably is some time for another being to just take the wheel for a minute and see how they do. But I guess we'll find out. So I'm way over. I'm sorry. But thank you guys so much for hanging out with me in the chat. Thank you again, Damien, for feeding me information. And thank you, of course, to Max for commissioning this episode. I hope you guys are enjoying the coverage. And until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.